Welcome to our online antenatal class with Sister Ingrid Groenewald. Today she'll be speaking to us about a first aid kit that you should have for parents with young babies and toddlers. Welcome, Sister Ingrid.
Thank you very much for having me again today. And like you said, this is actually quite an important topic, and it's something that often comes up, if you have a baby or if you're expecting a baby or you have little toddlers running around at home. What should I have at home that can actually be of benefit to yourself? Hopefully that you're never going to use it, but if you do need it, that you actually have it somewhere. And obviously I'm talking about a first aid kit, so what do you have and where should you keep it and what should be in there? Because let's face it, sometimes life happens, kids fall, babies have fever, so what are those kind of things that you actually need if you have baby or if you have a baby or if you have children at home? Okay, so first of all, I want to start off by saying, perhaps it's a good idea to have a container, to have something where you can keep it in. So I just brought a couple of things that I just want to show you. These are obviously ideas, and you can put your own stamp on it as to what will work for you and what to actually put in there. So these are actually ideas as well. So I just brought a container just to show you. It's just a normal big plastic container with a lid that I like to keep things in, that you can then also have somewhere in the cupboard. It is important to also know where it stays, and then everybody in the house, if it's the nanny perhaps, or if it is your partner, and obviously yourself, or anybody that actually also looks after the children, where to find it. So if it is something that happens, that to quickly go and grab the first aid kit, that is the first thing to look at. Then by this, with the container with the lid, something that works quite well is to print out just telephone numbers of every person that is important to have. It's obviously your own telephone number that you would put on there, and then also your partner's telephone number, and then anybody else that you might think that you might need to phone, like the ambulance number you can put on there, your GP, your clinic perhaps. Any person that you think you might need to phone, it is important to have the telephone numbers. And you might think that, yes, perhaps your doctor's telephone number or your husband's telephone number, but, it might not even be you that actually needs the numbers. It can be the nanny that actually needs the numbers. So it is important to have it. And also we know in any kind of stressful situation, sometimes we forget numbers. You can't remember what the number is. So it is important to have it. So normally what works well, you print it out and you actually put it on here. You can even laminate it and put it there. And then, you can't actually lose it, so it is in the container itself. Okay, so if we start with the basic things, what are the basic things that if you have a baby? So perhaps you're still pregnant and you're expecting your baby soon, or you have a small baby. What are the basic things that you need? And here I would say that the first thing is a thermometer. And you get different kinds of thermometers. This is a normal, very plain kind of thermometer. You press the button and there's a little screen and the number comes up. You put it under the arm for a couple of seconds and it will actually make a beep, 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 beep sound, and then okay, this is the reading, and you can have a look at it. You get different ones that you can put in the ear, on the forehead. The infrared thermometers are quite in currently, where, so there are various of different kinds of thermometers that is around that you can actually have a look at. So it doesn't matter which one you have, just by having a thermometer is important. And by knowing, obviously, also, if you read the temperature, what is normal, so it doesn't help to just know this, it says now 37. So what does it mean if it says 37? And I would actually say anything between 36 and 37.5 is considered a normal temperature, so don't stress if it's in that area. But if it's over 37.5, then obviously you know that this child or this person probably has a fever, okay? So, and then how to treat that. For young babies, for children, there are two different things that that's basically the same. It's paracetamol, and this is obviously Panado and Calpol. Those are the two brands that that is available that you can use, and it's basically in a syrup form, and you can give it to a baby, for, if you have fever. So, and obviously you would need normally some sort of syringe, or just a normal kind of syringe, which should show you here, just a normal syringe where you can pull it up and you can actually just a little bit, give it into the mouth, the dosage, that you can actually give to that child. So this is the normal thing. Initially, I would say just by having some sort of paracetamol available, also with a thermometer that you know what the temperature is, that is what you start off with, okay? Do not be tempted to get the whole pharmacy of medications. Sometimes you open a cupboard of somebody's house and it's like the whole pharmacy that is standing there, and that is of no use. I think, only if you need certain things you can get it. But these kind of things you can use for the immediate, for fever and for pain. You also get paracetamol in a suppository form, which, especially for children, sometimes we know it is very difficult to give any kind of dose that has to be swallowed. Some children are really terrible with that, and then they just really clench their little mouths closed. You will not be able to open it, or everything is just spit out at you. So this is where suppository actually works well. So I would actually advise you to go to your pharmacy and perhaps talk to the pharmacist to see what you can get for your first aid kit, but something paracetamol. So it's a syrup, and then I would also just get a suppositories, especially for in the middle of the night if the fever is very high. I must also just say here, fever is very uncommon, really. It's not a common thing for young babies to have fever, but it's better to have it compared by not having it. Okay, so this is the basic thing that I would say, put it in your container. Then if we go on and we look at little children that are already mobile and that are walking around or starting to learn, they bump themselves often, they can fall off tables or beds and so on. So all the bumps and bruises sometimes happen. And this is where I would say something like arnica. You get an arnica gel for children and different brands, not just one brand, that you can actually get, and you can just put some on, on the bumps. That is quite a nice thing to have. But then obviously for children, you need plasters. Okay. And here again, I just got some samples. You have to remember that if you go onto the shelves, in the shops, there are so many different ones. For children, obviously, it's sometimes quite nice if the key ones, you have some pictures on or whatever, especially the little toddlers that's really start to notice things. So plasters is always a good idea to have. And then together with plasters, I would say by having any kind of bandages, just by having some bandages, different sizes, having everything together in your box so that you have it available if it's needed. And then at the same time, I would say by having something that you can clean. So if there's a wound, so let's say there was a big scratch or, something that's bleeding, that you can just clean. And again, these kind of things you can get at the pharmacy, perhaps by making a list, and you can go to your pharmacy and you can just go and get these kind of things with obviously cotton wool or cotton wipes is a good idea to have as well. Then any kind of antibacterial cream is a good thing to have for a wound. If we think that if it's an open wound, you need to clean it, and then you need to put something on to try to keep infection away, and that is obviously with the antibacterial cream. And again, you have different brands that is available so that you can just put on, and then you can put your plasters on. Okay, so that is the normal kind of things, for little toddlers. For the ones that actually really hurt themselves so much that you would think perhaps stitches are needed, and we know it's almost like some children are more prone to that. Some are really quite adventurous and do all sorts of things, and again, life happens. And before going to the doctor, or if you live far away, something that is quite useful is you get like Sperry strips. So it is for wound closure. So it is basically like a plaster, but you can put the two, the skin together, and you can put the plaster over. So it just keeps it closed for time being, perhaps just for the time before you go to the doctor or to the hospital if needed. Okay, so that is another thing that I would say might be a good idea to just have in your first aid kit. Okay. Then if we think about toddlers, and if we think about little babies, if they're starting to walk, it is always important to look at safety in your own house. You have to look around. What do you see? What is potentially dangerous, so that you can actually take that away? And I know of a lot of families where in the kitchen, something that we sometimes forget is the kettle, and the cord of the kettle that perhaps is pointing towards the side of the surface, where these little hands, when a baby starts to walk and, the little hands start creeping and holding onto onto the table, sometimes this is where we see that our children are growing, because the little hand goes higher up, and then it can actually grab onto the hook of the cord, and kettles can fall, cups with tea can fall. So burns is also potentially something that can happen. Hopefully it does not happen to your child, but just by being very aware of where's what and what can you do to make it safer, okay? And because of wounds, especially if we think about burns, it is important to also have something in the house that you can treat immediately for if something really hot fell on your child. And again, you have different brands, but you get the burn shields, different ones, so that you can actually open and immediately put it on. Or you get a spray. Another thing, that you get certain sprays that you can just spray on the actual area, and then from there on, take the child to the doctor or to the hospital. So it helps to have certain things available that is just for the immediate, so if something happens, what can you do immediately, and then by taking the child into the hospital or to your doctor or clinic. Okay, so just the important bit, I think, initially would by having the paracetamol, and then the thermometer. That is always the first thing that you would need. So have that in there. And also, as your children grow, you adding things as you need certain things, and you add it, and eventually you've got the whole box full of stuff, so it is important to have it. And I would definitely advise you by having the telephone numbers ready in the lid, so that you can actually just go and refer back to the numbers, so that everybody knows who to phone. Something that I would definitely also add in this box is a box of non-sterile gloves, just by having some gloves that you can put on. Because remember, it's not just for you, it's also to protect yourself, and then to protect against, the child or the person that hurt herself. But also it might be the nanny, it might be somebody else that's visiting in the house, to either treat or who is treating your child. Okay, so it is always important by having all these things available together. There's no point in running around in the house and trying to find certain things that you actually need at the time. So it's better to have everything together. If you're really organized, you can have different slots, like this is the slot for the fever, this is the slot for wounds, this is the slot for bandages and whatever, so that everything is at its own space. So yeah, so I hope that actually just gave you some ideas as to what to put in. So get yourself a container, make a list of things that you would need, and go find the things, in the pharmacy. Ask in the pharmacy possibly for some assistance, and then you just put everything together in the box. And by having one place, don't move it around. Always put it in one place, high enough that the children cannot reach it, but that you can reach it, or your nanny can reach it if there's a need for that.